My partner in crime is Dan Berg, and we're joined by a special guest, Mike Quackenbush. Dan, it's going to be a great show, and without further ado, take it away with the interview.
Thrilled to be here.
And we're equally thrilled because we have a special guest on the line right now. The one and only Mike Quackenbush is joining us for a chat. Mike, great to have you on the show today.
Hello, Stevie. One of you is standing in traffic, so beware.
Yeah, I heard that too. I'm assuming that came from Dan's end, but who knows? Because
that's a terrible place to podcast from, Dan. Get out of the street.
He's still better off than Todd Martin, because our good friend Todd seems to always do them in the middle of a tornado or a hurricane.
Live dangerously.
Well, we are living dangerously because, in fact, you only live twice. So, with that, I'm going to let Dan ask the first question. By all means, Dan, go ahead.
So we're, at this point, less than a week away from the rebirth of Chikara at You Only Live Twice. And to start off, what should fans and newcomers expect from this live event?
Well, I think You Only Live Twice, this coming Sunday in Easton, is a great jumping-on point if you're new to Chikara. If you've only just kind of discovered what Chikara is all about in the last year, give or take, and perhaps you found that the storytelling can be quite dense and everything else, where is a great place to get in? This is certainly it. You Only Live Twice on Sunday, May 25th, is a great starting point. But for those people that have been with us for a very long time, and certainly we do, we have an incredibly dedicated fan base that's stuck with us no matter what's going on. I think for them it's going to be an extremely rewarding day. I want for everybody that has been so incredibly loyal to us, to all the performers and everybody else that makes Chikara what it is. I really want it for May 25th to be a very rewarding day for them. Certainly it will be for us. This is May 25th, of course, is the date on which the company launched back in 2002. So this marks the closure of 12 full years for us. So the feeling backstage will certainly be festive. And hopefully that translates, that verve and that electricity permeates the Palmer Center.
And I will be in attendance. I have my I Am Chikara shirt. I'm very, very excited. But I happen to notice now, with some of the cards announced for You Only Live Twice, it seems that you have not yet signed to compete. You will be there, right?
Oh, well, I'm no longer an active professional wrestler. I retired April 6th, 2013. My final match was wrestled in Secaucus, New Jersey. So, no, you should not expect to see me in the ring.
Okay, but you will be in attendance. Will you make your presence felt? I think is the best way to put this.
Certainly at the concession stand. That's where my presence will be felt most of all, provided they have ice cream. My presence will also be felt at Starbucks, Dan.
Okay.
All right.
Steve, I believe you had a question?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'm going to be attending Chikara coming up as well, but I won't be able to make it to the Palmer Center. I'll be going in June to Chicago, and I'm thrilled by how quickly the two Chicago events that I signed up for sold out. The original evening event and then the expansion pack both sold out right away, and then Quantum of Solace got added on as well. So it seems to me that Chikara is just booming right now, so the return at this point seems permanent, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, certainly we're thrilled as well. And chances are by the time we're on the other side of You Only Live Twice this coming Sunday, things seem to be on target that it's entirely possible Quantum of Solace will sell out as well. So that all three of our events on June 21st in the Chicago area would be sold out is incredibly encouraging to us. It's very heartwarming to know how much Chicago loves Chikara, and everybody is just super excited for that. As we are for all the places. There's a lot of places we're going for the very first time. We've never been into Detroit proper before. We've never been to Montreal before. So there's a lot of stops upcoming on the 2014 tour schedule that are brand new to us. In fact, one of the most recently added ones, Richmond, Virginia, is a brand new place for us. So we're excited to go out and see our old friends, like our great fans in Chicago, who we visited a couple times in recent years, as well as the new places as well. And I would wager to say that at least if the current wave of momentum is any indication, the future can only be brighter for Chikara.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a feeling this touring schedule is part of the reason that Chicago and these other cities are going to sell out so fast is because a lot of fans are used to Chikara being on the East Coast, and this tour schedule for 2014 gives people who haven't been able to take it to the Palmer Center and be there, this chance to reach out and the Chikara they love is coming. I mean, even for me, it's not like next door to me, but 6 hours away is close enough for me that I couldn't possibly miss it.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. And the places that we're headed so far this year, I think as people now have a sense of what the schedule looks like, a majority of it has already been announced to the public. Most of these areas, with the exception of our home base, which is Pennsylvania, we do tend to stay in Pennsylvania quite a bit, and our sister promotion, Wrestling is Fun, is quite active in Pennsylvania as well. But traveling outside, we're only coming to New York City once this year. So, I think that's certainly helped as well, that people realize, if I want to go and see these guys in 2014, I've got one chance to do that. And I better make sure, when they come to Quebec City, if that's as close as they're getting to me, I need to be there. And I think that's contributed as well.
And on the subject of Quebec City, I noticed that the movie titles ended up being in French for the French-speaking populace that lives there, and I was amused by that when I translated it and got the James Bond titles back in English. So I was wondering if you could talk to us about basically all of the shows being named after James Bond movies and the significance of that.
Well, there's always a unifying theme throughout the seasons, going back quite a few seasons into Chikara, whether that theme is immediately obvious or not, that ties the show names together. So if you go back and you look at the titles of all the events, you'll notice, for example, there was a season where all the event titles were allusions to 80s animated properties. There's like our Cyberneticos, for example. There's often a unifying element there that are allusions to Batman. There's always some kind of thread like that you can trace back and pull on throughout the events. But it is not always, I get asked this frequently, for example, is there some kind of a hidden message? Or if I went and watched all these James Bond films, would it somehow inform maybe a subtext that's going on at Chikara or something like that? And generally speaking, that is not intentionally the case, although there are certainly those times where people discover, serendipitously, they discover wonderful little bits of shared continuity, and that's great. But beyond that, I think what it really boils down to is there was no more fitting thing to call May 25th than You Only Live Twice, which just happened to be a James Bond film title. And that just seemed like right up our alley anyway, and it sort of informed the rest of season 14 as well.
Right, and people shouldn't overly assume that a title necessarily implies anything. Like, if there's a Chikara event called Skyfall, they shouldn't assume that means Scorpio Sky is on the card or anything.
No, there might be some happy coincidences along those lines, but it's not overt. It's not that on the nose.
Exactly. All right, Dan, I know you have another question, so I'm going to throw it back to you.
Just moments ago, you did mention your sister company, Wrestling is Fun, and it seems as though a lot of the talent that was specific to these Wrestling Is factions, such as the Estonian Thunder Frog and Juan Francisco de Coronado and Eric Corvus, will be making their appearances in Chikara. Some of these guys have shown, that they are with Chikara, whether it be at National Pro Wrestling Day or the recent Wrestling is Fun event in Reading, where Eric Corvus stood alongside of the Chikara members. How do you feel about bringing these guys into the fold?
Well, I think it's great, especially like the guys you mentioned, the Estonian Thunder Frog and Juan Francisco de Coronado and Eric Corvus, and there's plenty of others as well, we could populate that list with, who all bring enormous talent. And, I think it's wonderful to be able to showcase, that type of thing. It's great that there are alternate stages, like Wrestling is Fun, where they may get a chance to get in the shallow end of the Chikara pool, so to speak, and sort of there they've been able to intermingle. I mean, I would bet if you went back across his match history, Juan Francisco de Coronado across the last 15 or 20 Wrestling is Fun events has probably crossed paths with the majority of the Chikara roster, even though he's only about to make his Chikara debut. So, I'm very, very excited to see all of those guys. I think it's in terms of the extended Chikara family, it only enhances everything because as I said, each of them, and their talents are not all identical, but each of them brings their own individual strengths. And, specifically maybe what, the Estonian Thunderfrog brings to the table might be very different from what Eric Corvus brings to the table, but it's a combination of all those ingredients together that make it, taste so very good.
Are you going to, allow for any of the wrestlers to join the fray if they so choose?
Well, I think the wrestling is the greater, I don't know if you want to call it a network or whatever you might want to say there, has given the opportunity for lots of incredibly talented and maybe even some undiscovered folks to intermingle with the rest of the Chikara roster. You know, when the roster was sort of scattered into the various wrestling organizations, they had a chance to cross paths. So, for example, Scott Parker and Shane Matthews might have crossed paths with a couple people that over here deviANT did not. And UltraMantis and Hallowicked might have crossed paths with, someone very, very different than, say, an Eddie Kingston did. And it's been a great opportunity to widen the scope. And certainly those that have stepped up and have really shown something, I think only more opportunities will come their way. I think the cream rises to the top.
Basically, what I want to know is we've got all these great events coming up. We've already discussed the James Bond theme, the You Only Live Twice was an appropriate name, and of course Quantum of Solace, which was just added for Chicago, and so many more great events coming up. Goldfinger, The Living Daylights, The World Is Not Enough, so on and so forth. And this event schedule just is so fleshed out that I've got to think you're excited about the coming year. So in that respect, what can you tell us about the coming year in Chikara and what you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to seeing everyone again. I think that's as plain as I can put it, and I mean that in all ways you could interpret it. It's been an extremely dark period for Chikara. What happened in the wake of Anniversario Never Compromise, which, here we are 51 weeks removed, almost a full year from when that occurred. It's hard to believe. Has been extremely dark. And while you might imagine that for a bunch of people who ultimately are independent contractors or freelancers, that moving from one organization to another would be done without real consequence of any kind, conversely, it has proven to be an extremely traumatic period for the Chikara family at large. And the fact that for the first time, really, almost all of us were able to take part in National Pro Wrestling Day, which was a tremendously positive event that involved fundraising for a very worthy cause and everything else. Nothing can really replicate exactly what it is that Chikara creates. And I mean that in terms of the feeling that it gives all of the performers and the feeling that it imbues in our fan base. There is nothing exactly like that. And I think perhaps we underestimated how harsh it would be for us, the Chikara family, to learn that lesson over the course of the last 51 weeks. So we are excited to be back. We are excited to be together, and we are excited to see our fans. And we know they are coming from all over the planet to see us. We have a couple of fans that are coming from New Zealand, 3 fans that are coming from Australia. When you start to look at that, people that are literally coming from the other side of the planet Earth to be part of this. It only to us further emphasizes how very, very special this thing is that we have. And we only have it when we are all together. So I'm delighted that we're going to be out there in a really big way in season 14. As you said, the tour schedule is fairly well fleshed out at this point, and we're just excited beyond compare. We are excited to meet everyone once again. And it is from that ideas like the expansion pack and some of the more interactive elements that you're going to be seeing. A great example is that Lucha Bowl Make-A-Wish Foundation fundraiser that we're doing. We are genuinely excited. I feel like there is sometimes a pervading thought in professional wrestling that I think is very obsolete and outdated, that it's us versus them. Us, the wrestlers, versus them, the fans. And I think that's a really outdated thought process. I think that needs to be done away with. We only succeed or fail based on them. So it is not, it's not an us versus them. It's all of us together. And I hope that people will really see that emerge as one of our guiding principles, not just in season 14, but everything we have planned upcoming, as we go forward.
Well, I think the cookouts and the bowling parties and the expansion packs, they just all become part of the Chikara experience, that you go to have a good time at a fun-filled Lucha Super show, but then you get to also interact with the work, and be part of the environment of hanging out with the wrestlers. And like you said, it's a family. It's not just us versus them. It's everybody coming together in this family to have a fun-filled time. It's just
a shift in perspective, I think. And I think it's one that wrestling as a whole is long overdue to fully embrace. It's an obsolete thought, to think that, somehow we are at war. Our fans, do not come to wrestling in general, and I mean this specifically for Chikara, but I'd like to extend this to mean professional wrestling as a whole. They do not come to be insulted. They don't come to feel ostracized. They don't come because they're dumb and we're conning them. All of these things are so outdated and so odious to me. And I think if you've only just joined up with the Chikara Army recently, or you're a longtime member in very good standing, something you know is that we do not treat our fan base that way. We do not regard them with any level of contempt, and quite the opposite. We are having the most fun when you're having that fun with us. It is never at your expense, and it is never designed to insult your intelligence. And for that reason, we work very, very hard to make sure that the type of wrestling we create is acceptable to everyone.
On that note, I'm going to throw it back to Dan with these words. I think that's the same reason that people got behind the Daniel Bryan movement in the last year, because it was fun, it was positive, he was with the audience all the way, and they were with him all the way, and that's the same reason I love Chikara. So, Dan, back to you.
All right, and I just do want to know, I've never felt so fortunate to live in the Lehigh Valley than I am right now with all these great events coming up this upcoming weekend.
Is that a commentary on real estate taxes in the Lehigh Valley, Dan?
It's a commentary on a lot of things in the Lehigh Valley, Mike. Do you mind if we take one question from a fan from Facebook?
Absolutely. I just want you to know that I'm not going to answer it. Go ahead.
All right. It's admittedly a fanboy question from Todd Christopher. He asked what your favorite episode of Batman the Animated Series was.
There is an episode of Batman the Animated Series where a couple kids are recounting their interpretations of Batman, and they use that episode. They do a short bit that's very much inspired by the Dick Sprang, Bob Kane era, like the Golden Age Batman. And I think it involves a giant typewriter. Then one of the other kids tells a differing story that's much more like Frank Miller's Dark Knight from the mid-'80s. There's another one as well. I can't immediately think of what it is. Whatever that one is called, the title escapes me, is a really wonderful episode about the way in which subjectivity comes into your enjoyment of a story. And it might be called Legends of the Dark Knight, now that I think about it. But that's my favorite episode.
Okay, I have to throw out a question to both of you. Have you seen, I'll ask Mike this, and Dan, you can answer as well. Have you seen a British game show called The Chase?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
I haven't either.
My wife introduced me to this show last night, and it's a trivia question game show where you have to build up a cash prize by answering a number of questions correctly. And one of the questions that was asked was, in what fictional city is Arkham Asylum located? And I'm screaming at the screen. I'm screaming, Gotham, Gotham! And this British person that answered didn't know, and I was so disappointed. I was crestfallen.
As a recent experiment, not all that recent now that I think about it, I had once, on a podcast I make called the Grizzly Bear Egg Cafe, I had quizzed my friend Clayton Morris, who works in the news business. I had a number of questions about President Barack Obama and a number of questions about Batman. And he was, despite the fact that he works in news, was able to demonstrate that he knows far more about Batman than we know about the President of the United States. But superheroes are, to an extent, a uniquely American convention. When you look at, like, the great Japanese superheroes, they are radically different. The concepts of Ultraman and the Kamen Rider and the Super Sentai, which we know here as Power Rangers, they're radically different concepts. And even the idea of superheroes from Mexico are very, very different from what we know here in the United States. But it is great to see, right now, superhero films which are dominant at the box office, that our particular interpretation of superheroes are proving to be very popular worldwide.
And that's very true. And coming up next weekend as well. So talk about your fun-filled Lucha Super Show weekends. We get You Only Live Twice and X-Men coming back for Days of Future Past. I mean, how can you beat that?
That's really where the weekend starts for the whole Chikara family, because we're all going to be that Friday night.
I think so. Okay, Dan, do we have anything else from Facebook, or are we wrapping it up?
I can pull one more. Let's see. And I think I already know the answer to this, but Jason Kern asked, now that you're retired, I think this is sort of apropos, but he asked what your dream match was, if you had worked it, or one that you hadn't worked yet that you would have liked to, anybody in the world that you would have liked to have wrestled.
I can look back. There are a few folks that I wish I would have had the chance to encounter. I was very fortunate in that I got to share the ring with virtually all of my wrestling heroes, maybe with the exception of the late great Owen Hart, and not for lack of effort, Dean Malenko. But I had often hoped that I would have the chance to do a singles match with Christopher Daniels. At the time that he really was ascendant on the West Coast independent scene, I was enjoying quasi flavor of the month like status on the East Coast, and this is in the mid to late 90s. And there were a number of promoters that had put on the table the idea that they would bring Christopher Daniels to the East Coast or myself to the West Coast, or we'd meet in the middle of the country and we would have this East versus West match. And I had sort of built it up in my head as something that could have been quite magnificent. I have tremendous admiration for Christopher Daniels. I don't think that I necessarily wrestled at his level, but it would have been a lot of fun to try to keep up with him. And while I wish that could have happened, I should be really quite content, because I can think of no more fitting end to the arc of Mike Quackenbush than he got to stand beside the man who inspired him to be a professional wrestler at the very beginning of his arc, and that represented the end. I think it's very, very fitting, and I'm entirely content with that.
All right. Well, I think that should do it for the Facebook questions.
Well, then we'll be happy to wrap it up on that note, and we'll add some plugs for the upcoming events. So I give the floor to Mr. Quackenbush, and please feel free to plug away.
Well, thanks. I think the vast majority of things you will need to know, my friends, are at ChikaraPro.com. Links to all of our social media outlets like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube are there at your disposal. Our entire event schedule that's been made public thus far is posted there in the events section. And everything there is getting updated, especially now as we're really here in the home stretch, right? Headed into You Only Live Twice. The updates are coming fast and furious over at ChikaraPro.com. I sincerely hope that if we're coming anywhere near you, that we have a chance to see you in person, because as I did mention, the places that we're headed this year, we're probably just coming there the one time, and so we would hate to miss you on the season 14 tour. We're really, really excited for everything that the upcoming weekend holds, and if you can't be there to join us live, you can stream it live through iPay-per-view. That's being made available through our partner SmartMark Video. Their streaming site is SMVOD. That's like SmartMark Video on Demand.com, and you can order You Only Live Twice there. And if you think, man, this all sounds so daunting, the mythology and the continuity and everything else, I don't know that I'm ready to get in. Well, we've got you covered. We have a free ebook that is out called Chikara Press Start, and we will give it to you for nothing more than your email address. We'll send you the download information. So if you're interested to grab that, there's information posted right on the front of ChikaraPro.com. So you can read Press Start, get all ready to go, and we'll see you Sunday in Easton for You Only Live Twice.
Absolutely. And I'll just add that if you're waiting on Quantum of Solace because you want to see You Only Live Twice first, don't wait too long, because first and second row are already sold out for that show.
Right. There's only a few dozen tickets total remaining for Quantum of Solace at this point. I believe the number is now under 36 tickets remain. So you really don't want to wait long on that.